The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll discuss a 0-0 draw versus Vancouver at home. We'll cover some other team news. We'll talk a little bit about Austin FC 2, and then we're also going to be joined by Mark Rogondino to preview the LA Galaxy match this coming weekend. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I wanted to talk about the youngest Austin FC fan that I saw at the match on Saturday. That was your nephew, who was like,
oh yeah,
was at Hop Squad, kind of riding along. I think maybe did he participate in the pregame interview?
He did.
Sat in on Swoon Tower. So yeah, maybe let's talk through your day on Saturday.
Yeah. So there was a lot more preparation in going to the stadium, and don't get it twisted. I was not responsible for a child. My parents were watching my brother's 1.5-year-old son over the weekend, and they decided, what the heck, we'll just take him to the game with us. Mind you, his bedtime is at kickoff, and so we weren't sure how everything was going to go. Considered bringing 2 cars for a while, but took him. He ended up being a champ. He cried one time because he fell off the stairs next to our seats, but other than that, was great. Happy as could be the whole game. But before the game, Mike and Steph from Swoon Tower were out of town and unavailable to interview the dog. And so they asked if Ashley and I would do it for them. And so luckily Vince, my nephew, was being very talkative at the time. We got him involved in the interview as well. So you guys can look out for that on the next episode of Swoon Tower.
It's dynamite. You're raising the next generation of journalists there too.
That's right.
That's great. Well, I don't know if we'll call what we do journalism, but the next generation of whatever this is.
All right, let's jump into Austin FC news. So last week we speculated based on some pretty strong information that Julio Cascante was going to get a contract renewal. That ended up happening, I think, the day after we recorded. And so it's exactly what we thought it was, guaranteed through 25 with an option year in 26. Anything else we want to say about that, or did we cover it enough last week?
I think that's pretty much it. I don't know, he looked really cool in his picture that they shot. With
He
his,
always looks cool,
beanie
though.
hat on. Yeah, it's like Julio's very fashionable, and I miss him a lot on the field. That's the other thing I want to point out. But yeah, that was about it. About what we expected on the contract.
Yeah. In worse news, Jean Kolmanic is out for the remainder of the season. He apparently tore his ACL in training, underwent surgery. That's a long road back, and so he's going to be out for the rest of the year. Josh Wolf talked a little bit in some press availability, I think after the game and maybe in the midweek one as well, about depth there. I know that, like, I'll never wish injury upon any player, but like if there were a position for us to lose a starter in long term, I think fullback is probably the best one for it to happen in. Would you agree with that, or do you think there's another place that would be worse or that would be better?
I think left back specifically is probably the place that's the deepest, because I don't know if you would want to necessarily lose like Nick Lima and have to roll with only John Gallagher on the right. So yeah, I think it's probably the deepest spot on the club. So it's not great. Obviously, it leaves Austin thinner than Austin would like to be there. But I think it's something that the team can weather too. And, I think going into this match, then the question becomes like, how would that shift the tactics? And we can probably talk a little bit about that when we get into the Vancouver match, because I feel like Jean being out did have a direct effect on how Austin played on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Let's talk about that when we get into the game, and if we think that's what changed it, or if Wolf was going to do that anyway. But as far as fullback depth, like John Gallagher can play on both sides. Lima has played on the left before and can do that in a pinch. Lundqvist plays on the left, but then we have Hector Jimenez as well, who's played a lot of minutes on both sides of the field. And so, like, are all of those situations ideal? No, but it's not like we're playing someone completely out of position in a place they've never played before. Talking about center backs, where we are extremely thin right now. Radovanovic is in town. He's been training. I actually saw him as we were waiting for the dog to come by. A few of like Austin FC team staff walked by, and then Cascante, Kolmanic, and Radovanovic were all walking past, going over to like the player suite. And they all looked very handsome and very cool. Radovanovic, I know sometimes we see players in person and are like, oh, he's very small, or he's like way shorter than I thought it was be. He's actually quite tall. I think the advertised 6'2" is completely true. Looks pretty big to me. But in the post-game presser the other day, Wolf was saying that he's kind of expecting both of them to be, I guess, available in early May. Saying Julio might be back in training this week, maybe like full training this week or next week. Radovanovic, he said he wants to get 2 full weeks of training before he really tries to give him minutes. So based on that, I kind of don't think we're going to see him on the bench for the Galaxy game, but probably for San Jose after that, I would guess that we will see Radovanovic, if not maybe him and Julio. Do you think he would put both of them on the bench?
I don't see how they're both on the bench. I think when Julio comes back to start, you would hope, then that's when you see Radovanovic on the bench. But so are you thinking like May 6th, probably Portland? So it's probably the first time that you would maybe see Julio.
Oh yeah, I was thinking
any kind of
I was
length.
thinking the San Jose one.
But San Jose's April 29th, so he said early May. If we're holding to early May, then it wouldn't be until Portland. So then now, I feel like this is a position of great weakness right now that suddenly becomes a relatively deep position with maybe not like a super high ceiling. But, going forward, after we get to May 6th, 13th, 17th, when those matches start, like who do you see as being in the game day squad among the center backs regularly?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because now that Wolf knows that he can put Ring back there if he needs to, maybe he does roll with just 2 proper center backs on the game day roster, and it gets interesting. But I think a lot of it's going to have to do with how fit Julio actually is. Like, is he really back to 100%? If not, then maybe we can afford to leave him out, especially if Radovanovic is looking good in training and looks like he's up to snuff and can step in and really contribute right now. Then maybe you let Julio slowly play his way back in until he's 100% fit, and you don't try to rush anything, especially now that you just gave him that new contract. This is a long play at this point. And so, I don't know. I think it's going to depend on, how quickly Radovanovic can get up to it and how fit Julio actually is.
And then you're started to get, in May, you get into some two match weeks and then some U.S. Open Cup action too, I think. So you're going to need more depth. The club's going to need more depth than one would think necessarily when these all happen.
Yeah. Some other interesting news that we saw online today is Capital City Soccer posted an article saying that they believe that Claudio Reyna is completely been removed from any affiliation with the club. What is this based on, Jeremiah?
I was gonna say, I was telling somebody today in Slack, like the among the news and rumors part of the show, like we're gonna venture more into rumor than we probably usually do. So it's basically 2 things. There's a guy named, I don't remember, I think it was his name Alan, that went on the We Are Austin TV Twitter space after the match on Saturday night and said, so he was talking to one of the owners, one of the guys whose faces was on the website, nothing more specific than that, and who heard Claudio was out. And then I guess today, the Cap City gang went to AustinFC.com and saw that Claudio is no longer listed as one of the advisors or technical advisors. I think Nolan Sheldon's still on there, but Claudio's not. So based upon those 2, I don't know if they're facts, based upon those 2 pieces of information, we believe that Claudio is no longer associated with the club in any way. And I can't imagine that there will ever be official news around that. That just doesn't seem like something that they will announce.
Yeah, and if they do, I feel like it's going to be like the Friday afternoon news dump, like 1 paragraph press release kind of thing. But you may be right. Maybe they don't announce it at all. I know that we've learned over our time to not ever trust anything that's on Austin FC or MLS websites because it's often wrong. You would think the front office names are a little bit different because probably the league doesn't control that part of the website. So like, I'm not ready to say this is 100% confirmed, but also it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing. So if one assumes that's true, I've seen a lot of chatter online and elsewhere about what Claudio being away from the team has meant to this season so far. And I don't think we've talked about this on the show much lately, but like basically nothing, right? Like what deal would have happened or not happened if Claudio Reyna was with the club? Because like they're usually working far enough ahead. Like maybe Radovanovic something different happens there. But I feel like every other move like was probably already in the works at the point in time when Claudio was sort of separated from his daily duties.
Yeah, I know you. I saw you having a conversation with someone on Twitter or Facebook somewhere recently, talking about like what signings are in the Sean Rubio era and what signings are in the Claudio Reyna era. And like, I think the point you were trying to make is at this point, probably everything is still the Claudio Reyna era, because Sean Rubio himself told us on this podcast that they're working like a year and a half in advance sometimes. And like they're keeping contact and have all these plates spinning, and they only get some of them over the line, or only some of them are at the right time or the right need at the right time. And so it's high likelihood that all of the signings that have been done, all the outgoing things that have been done were in the works. Maybe there's one or two where that's not the case, but I would guess most of them, they were already possibilities being worked on before Rubio took over.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Well, yeah, plus because it's one I made when I was arguing with somebody. Maybe that's why I think it's a good point. Let's talk about Austin FC too, because you went to both games this week, correct?
Yeah, I did.
All right.
Those games are a lot of fun, man. Like, it's especially after a disappointing night at Q2 to go out and to sit in those bleachers and just like listen to people heckle players, and to see the players like have a look of recognition on their face and sometimes interact back with the fans. It's just like so pure and so fun. Also, the team is quite good. They keep winning, and so that makes it a little bit more fun too, but it just feels like a little bit lower stakes. My week's not going to be ruined if they don't win. Get to watch some exciting young players play, and then just like sit in the stands and have fun with your friends. It's been it's been great.
That's a pretty cool environment too. Like, I've watched some other MLS2 matches, and they tend to be like in one of these giant soccer complexes with probably like 3 rows of bleachers on both sides. But Farmer Field seems like a pretty cool place to watch a match.
Yeah, itself. And the turnouts have been good too. I'd say the Wednesday one midweek were fewer people there, but this one on Sunday, I would guess it's probably like 80-ish% of what was there for the opener when they sold it out and were turning people away at the gates. And so a really good turnout. And so the atmosphere really is good.
That's cool. Well, you want to talk about I guess you want to give the highlights of the matches right quick?
Yeah, so midweek they played North Texas SC, which is actually FC Dallas's development team. Beat them 3-0. They all came pretty early, so it was a penalty kick in the 8th minute. Valentin Noel finished that one. Valentin Noel scores again in the 12th minute off of when it was a when playing it out of the back goes wrong moment. It ended up being a really nice finish, though. It was not easy to finish, even though it was a gift. And then the third one was a similar moment. Playing out of the back goes wrong, and Alfonso Ocampo Chavez finishes that one. But a team that like FC Dallas produces young players, and this is their like stepping stone to the first team. A guy who played in this game, Kamungo, played, I don't know if he played the whole game, but started this game against Austin FC, scored the winner for FC Dallas's first team the other night on the weekend. And so like, these aren't scrubs, these are good teams that they're playing, and Austin FC is stepping to them and looking really good against these guys. The Sunday night game was against St. Louis City, and they won that one 2-0. This one was a goal from David Rodriguez. Really nice transition goal. They broke away. Alfonso Ocampo Chavez was carrying it, has a nice little pass around the last defender, and then Rodriguez chips the keeper to score. And then the second goal in that one was extra exciting because it was Micah Burton's first professional goal, and we were all there to see it. We were all like saying, like, one day we're gonna talk about this night.
Well, again, in that match, I know you'd said this. Like, Micah Burton still does kind of look like a kid playing against those guys, just size wise. He's like he looks so young. He obviously played well, but like I think with him, I could tell more than almost anybody. Like this is like an academy player playing against grown men. But yeah, good for him. So now they are in first place in the Western Conference now. After this match is on 13 points, 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. So it was a really strong week. And you had a little story when you were hanging out with Mike Cragnola. Was that on the Wednesday game?
It was at the Wednesday game. I was sitting with Mike, and then Marcelo and Hannah Tayson were sitting up ahead of us. and a kid comes up. He's probably, I don't know, between 8 and 10 years old, walks up to me and says, "Hey, are you one of the Moon Tower guys?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Landon." And he said, "I really like your podcast." And then he got a little bit nervous and like kind of scampered away. So after the game, I saw him walk out and saw he was with his parents. And so I went over and talked to them. And their names are Kate and Alex. And Kate said that they had like, I think I may be getting this wrong, but I think like she had just been getting into soccer, maybe hadn't really watched professional soccer all that much, and found our show and really appreciated like us being able to help her learn about the team and learn about the game a little bit more. And they were very lovely and very nice to talk to. And so thanks, Ari, for coming up and saying hi. It was very nice to meet you. I saw them again at the Sunday game. So they said that they heard us talking about those games at the show on the show. And we're like, oh, that sounds fun. We should go check it out. And now I've seen them at 2 in a row now. So it seems like they're enjoying their time out there.
They're all in on it. So Austin will play next. It's away, correct? Yeah, LA Galaxy away. And then on Friday the 28th, Austin FC2 will be back home against Minnesota United too. So if anybody wants to get the chance to get out there and check it out, sounds like a good time.
I think the Academy is about to kick off playing again soon as well. So there's going to be a lot of soccer available to go watch out at Parmer Field and at Q2. All of those combined, you could have your weekends pretty full if you wanted to.
Yeah, and I love that. I think I mentioned this last week. But man, I love that it's all, like I can't always make it out, but they're all on Apple, or I think this game was on YouTube, but like you can watch them all too, which is really cool. Like even if you can't make it out to them in person, you can keep up with everything on TV or online. And so there's a lot of excitement around the second team. There's a lot of frustration about the first team. And I think we've both seen a lot of comments about how Charlie Asensio could be the solution at left back, and David Rodriguez and Ocampo Chavez maybe should be like solutions to what's going on in the attack. Like, do you want to talk about the difference between what we see at MLS Next Pro and maybe even USL, but especially MLS?
Yeah, it is exciting to see these second team players playing so well and also playing the system really well. Like they're playing the same system as the first team and executing against it really well. Really exciting to watch. Have been good defensively too. And so it's easy to like look at these guys and say like, okay, the first team's not doing well. Maybe some of these guys are the answer. But like you said, I think it's important to remember the level that this is at, that it's probably like at least a level and a half below MLS, if not further than that. USL, by folks who watch a lot of both of these leagues, they still say that USL is like head and shoulders above MLS Next Pro at this point. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. So like these guys are young, they're less experienced, and they're playing against lesser competition. And so I think it's going to be easier to execute this system against lesser competition in that scenario. I also heard somebody, actually, Marcelo won't mind me picking on him a little bit. This is the Moon Tower Soccer Games Master, Marcelo Chason. He brought up the idea of like, okay, if Brett Utley, the second team coach, has these guys playing the system so well and like so dynamic, so fluid in this system, maybe like what about him taking over the first team? Would he do a better job? And I think that like I told him like there's other parts of this like you have to keep in mind. Brett Utley so far has been in like youth development. He had an assistant coach job at RGV and then was like in the first team staff, not even like the assistant coach, but like one of the assistant coaches at Inter Miami. And that's what his resume is so far. And so, yeah, can he teach and can he like teach guys how to play the system? Sure. But if Maxi Urruti is coming to him saying like, I want to play more, or so, like a player gets an attitude or something's going on, like there's this other like man management aspect of it that I think you need to have some more experience before taking on that kind of role. And so I think, yeah, like, I don't know that Brett Utley would be the best candidate for the job at the moment. As good of a job as he's been doing.
This whole discussion makes me think back to the interview with David Goss last week, who talked about the system and the identity and how like it's great that everybody knows what to do, but at every level, people get faster, people get stronger, people get smarter. And so what works against low-level competition, relatively low-level competition is not necessarily going to translate for anybody, including all the players and the coach.
Yeah, and we saw Josh Wolf is maybe still on his learning curve, like, and he was the number 2 guy in the league for several years before then, and then at the national team as well, and he's still on that learning curve. And so someone like people with even less experience than him are like have even more to learn and probably farther to go than he even did at that point.
So
I will say one player at the moment, talking about these second team guys, that could play for the first team at the moment is Damian Loss. He has played lights out the last 2 games that I've watched, and there's a couple that I didn't get to watch live and only got to see highlights. But all the games I've seen him so far, he's looked really good, and to the extent that I kind of think if Stuver had to miss any significant amount of games, that Loss might be the first name called instead of Bersano. I could be wrong there, but he's been playing. He's been playing really well, both with his feet and shot stopping. And so just turned 20 years old. I think this kid is for real. I'm really excited to see what the future looks like for him.
Yeah, I think you really understand what the scouting department saw in him when you see the way he plays, in the Austin FC system. He does look like, and he looks great in the, what do we call him? The Malibu Damien kit? I don't know what you call it at that level, but in the pink, purple, yellow jersey, he looked great. And we saw an example of that with Andrew Tarbell played in goal for Dynamo 2 over this weekend to get some minutes. So yeah, I could definitely see the logic behind like having your real second goalkeeper that you would rely on when you need him for a significant amount of time playing the second team. So that way they're on the field all the time.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this in preseason, but it's like Matt Bersano is kind of the ideal second string guy. He's like around 30 years old. I don't remember exactly how old he is, and probably knows his level. And he's like, I'm okay sitting on the bench behind Brad Stuver at this point in my career. Like, that's my place, and I'm okay with that. And then you can have Loss playing with the second team, getting minutes every week, playing 90 minutes every week. And then when the moment comes, they'll have that decision to make. But I think this is kind of the ideal scenario at the moment.
Well, I think we've kind of covered all the news. Let's take a break, and then we can get into Vancouver, which was not a win, but I think it was interesting. I'm less depressed to talk about this one than I was last week for sure.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And congratulations to 3 members of the FVF team for being selected by Thomson Reuters as Rising Star Super Lawyers in 2023.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 a year in bank fees. What does that convert to like in GAM? So like $500 in GAM, maybe $1,000? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, something like that.
You'll pay none of those bank fees with Amplify Credit Union.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower. All right, we are back. We're going to talk about Austin FC's 0-0 draw at home against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Austin FC is now sitting 10th place in the Western Conference at 8 points. They're just outside the playoff line. This week, I think, was better than the week before, but still not that good, but definitely better, right?
Definitely better. Well, if nothing else, the result was better. All the numbers were better. I think just the fact that Austin got 17 shots on goal this week after getting 17 shots on goal the last 2 weeks combined shows that something's going a little bit better. A clean sheet is good. It's weird to celebrate a 0-0 draw the way that Austin FC official properties and fans had to do that. But yeah, it was encouraging.
Yeah, so I think one thing that stood out to me, I guess not stood out to me when the game started, but was looking for when the game started, was what shape they were going to come out in. So the lineup drops. We see that it's Gallagher and Lima. And I think we had kind of been expecting one of two routes, that they swap, like maybe Gallagher goes back over to the left and you play Lima, or you just leave Gallagher on the right and slot Adam Lundqvist in on that left-hand side. Coach Wolf went with the prior of those two options, but whenever the game started, the shape was different. So instead of that 3-2-2-3 attacking shape with Gallagher overlapping all the way up to the wing, we stuck to that like 4 at the back and 1 defensive midfielder shape, like we saw the majority of last season.
And is this the first time that Austin played that way all year?
This year, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all been variations of that other shape. At some time, like there's one game where it almost looked more like a 3-4-3, where the like Finley and Gallagher were almost playing like wing backs, and I think Fagundez almost played like a wing back in one game, but it's never been this 4-1-2-3 shape like we saw all of last year.
Okay, so I speculated that this is because of the Kolmanic injury earlier on, and with the way you responded to it, I think maybe you have a different opinion on that.
I think it could be, but I don't think it necessarily is. I think Wolf maybe in midweek stuff last week said something about like whether we come out in a 3-back or in a 4-back, we need to do this, or I can't remember exactly what he was talking about, but he almost mentioned it as a possibility. And I think you could almost look at it as just like a back to basics kind of thing. Like, let's simplify, let's go back to what we know, and hopefully we can create more chances. We can move the ball a bit better, be a bit more confident in what we're doing. And although there were no goals scored, I think that came, like, that was true for chunks of the game where Austin was moving the ball better. We're getting into more dangerous moments, playing the ball in behind more. So I think that's something that Wolf specifically called out last week, was players weren't making runs in behind. And so it was pretty predictable where the ball was going to go. And you saw right from the jump, the center backs and Danny Pereira were both looking for any of those kind of front 4 guys to make runs in behind and playing balls over the top. And I think it was pretty dangerous for certain stretches of the game. It kind of stopped being so later on in the game. I'm not really sure why what the difference was there, but it did look helpful for stretches of the game.
Yeah, and so statistically, we get back to a game where Austin has 53% of the possession, 57% of possession. We talked about the shots. Austin had more shots. Austin had more shots on target. X goals effectively equal, but you cannot get away from the fact that Austin has scored 1 goal in the last 4 league matches. And while everybody thought the problem was going to be when Julio went down, the back line, like I love this. I pasted this in the show notes. Like if you look at the like the FOTMOB player ratings, like it gets progressively worse as you go forward, basically, with the exception of Danny, who had an amazing game again. But basically, like all the defenders were strong. Stuver was amazing again, and the attack was just a disaster in a different shape than it has been in, but like the results were still the same.
Yeah, and I think this one is, like if you talk about XG again in a single game, it's not a great stat, but there's a couple of pretty good chances that don't even register as XG. I think it's like in the 11th minute, there's a cross to the back post, and Alex Ring and Maxi Ruti are both going for it, and Maxi swings a boot up and either nicks it or just like distracts Alex Ring because he's afraid he's going to get kicked in the head. But like that's a super high chance if he gets his head on it, and he doesn't in the end. But some encouraging moments, but yeah, there's still something not quite clicking. And I think last week it seemed to be like we were moving the ball quite well and playing pretty confidently on the ball in the buildup, but when we got to the final third, kind of the spacing and the movement wasn't quite there. And I think in this game, the spacing, the movement was pretty good for a lot of the game, but we were playing a little bit sloppy. Danny Pereira, as good as he was carrying the ball at times, made some sloppy passes. Rogoni had a couple of sloppy passes. Sebastian Driussi had several heavy touches, some bad passes to nobody. uh, still had some other moments where you see him and he's like, oh, he's still extremely good, but he's not the superhero we saw last year, game in and game out.
Yeah, it's definitely one of his poorer games. And one of the theories that we heard around places was that he and Driussi were trying to occupy the same space, and if only he and Ruti would get together, then they would get that sense of connection they had last year, and that did not come to pass in this game at all. I mean, I thought Maxi was not great. I mean, not awful. But yeah, he and Driussi did not connect in the way they did before. And I think Owen Wolf had one of his worst games. I don't know if this is just being like a really young guy who's finally getting out and getting a lot of action, but like he also did not have a great performance.
Yeah, he was playing more advanced. He's essentially the Alex Ring role from last year. So it was Danny Pereira as a lone 6, and then Driussi and Wolf were kind of those dual 10, free 8, whatever you want to call it, a bit more advanced. Wolf still did a good job. He's good at finding space and making himself available in between lines and then receiving and turning. But he has this saying, we saw it a lot when he was playing on the wing last year. When he gets in the final third, he can get like a little timid and a little bit too conservative. And so, yeah, I think it's just like an experience thing that he needs to get to eventually. But still did actually, watching on the rewatch, he does cover a lot of ground, and I think that makes him useful just from a work rate perspective. And that'll be interesting. We can talk about who we want to see for the next game here in a little bit, and that might be something to factor into that. But yeah, with Driussi though, we're able to, in this shape, like he's kind of playing in the same space in both of these attacking shapes. But it seemed like, I don't know if it had to do with the shape or just the way we were moving within that shape, but we're able to get him on the ball a lot more often in this game, which again was encouraging. He wasn't always super sharp when he got on it, but we were finding him more.
Yeah, and you have this note. I did not listen to any of the MLS shows today, but you have Doyle on Rigoni. So why don't you share what Matt Doyle had to say about Emiliano Rigoni?
So for several weeks in a row, I would read Matt Doyle's column and he would say something. He would say one thing about Austin, and it would be something that I thought was wrong and disagreed with. This one, he said something that I think is actually pretty spot on. And a thing I've noticed in other games where when we play the ball out wide to him as he's playing wide, and I think we haven't seen it as much lately because he's been playing kind of that tucked in attacking midfielder role, but he was wide. Him and Diego were playing high and kind of sticking out to the touch lines. And we play the ball to him, and Owen Wolf did a really good job often of making a run in behind, like kind of along the edge of the box. And there were a few times where there's a lot of space right there. There's a center back keeping him onside by several yards, and Rigoni wouldn't play it in behind. And then finally he started doing it. And this is the thing that Matt Doyle pointed out in his column, is that like, this is like a basic rotation in possession, and you have to play that guy in behind. Like if that space is there, you have to be looking for it. And it almost feels like at times Rigoni's like trying to be too clever and like look at the pass and then cut inside and try to cross it. But like the cross from the edge of the box, like cutting it back towards the penalty spot, is always going to be so much more dangerous than that premeditated cross from in behind. Like when you get in behind that line, that back line is going to be scrambling and running towards their own goal. That's a position we want them in. And so I'm hoping we can continue to work that pattern and kind of take more advantage of it. And whether it's Owen Wolf or whoever can get some dangerous balls into the box from that position, because it's a good position to cross from.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Diego. So we do not know now Diego's status, but we had a not great moment around, what was that, 55 minutes in. He takes a corner, runs a little bit, and then goes down with what looked like a groin injury, and then immediately came off the field.
Yeah, it looks like maybe he hurt himself taking the corner even. And you had a good view of that. You said you kind of got the feeling that he was already feeling it before then.
So what happened is right before he took that kick, it's in the southwest corner, and the subs are warming up. And before he takes the corner kick, he goes over and starts talking to Rodney in a way that it's like clearly he's getting Rodney ready to come into the game. And originally I thought maybe that he was like, maybe it was like Diego feeling something and wanting to be like, hey, I don't know how this is going to go, but be prepared to come in if not. But then, the substitution wasn't immediately Rodney. It was Ethan Finley. So it's also possible he was just like, he knew Rodney was coming in and was wanting to coach him up too. Like, I think either of those are equally possible. I can't find anybody else that like observed it the exact same way. So, but it looked like people were expecting, or he was expecting Rodney to come on. But maybe it was just like he already knew that was part of the regular substitution pattern.
Yeah, based on kind of like where he was holding his leg and where the training staff were kind of examining him, it looks like it's inner thigh. So it's like, we don't know how serious it is, but it's not a knee injury. It's not something super serious where he's going to miss the whole season, but it could be like, if it's an adductor,
like Julio,
like Cascante,
right?
it could be 8-10 weeks. And so we'll hope it's not that long, but it very well could be.
Yeah, and so let's go into, so Rodney does get on the field, not immediately, and played pretty good. And I think in his time he had, and maybe Austin's going to see a lot more of Rodney in the next few weeks, depending upon what goes on with Diego. Like, do you think that's real? Do you think people are just like so frustrated by everybody else that Rodney looking average seems better? Or do you think Rodney was actually a little bit dangerous? Like, I think it was a little bit dangerous.
I thought he was, yeah. And like, I think we know, like, Rodney playing lights out is still, I'm going to say, like, probably not that good still.
Right.
But Rodney playing like pretty good consistently, like maybe that's better than what we've been having. And like, maybe just like a little bit different spark is useful. So I thought he did a good job of not only making runs in behind, that we know he's pretty fast and he likes to play aggressive like that, but he was also kind of checking back and wasn't doing anything super fancy with the ball, but was receiving and kind of recycling it back into Driussi or into Gallagher over there, doing a pretty good job of that kind of stuff. And so it almost, I don't know, I would view it almost as like playing Owen Wolff on the wing last year, where it's like, we know you're not going to do anything amazing, but if you can just do nothing bad, then maybe that's good enough.
Maybe that's good enough. Yeah, that may be the case. And I think we also saw some time from Jafal. He got not a ton of time. He came for Owen Wolff and played, I think, about 10 minutes. I also saw some calls for more time from him. I mean, I think there's something there, but I've not seen enough to be super convinced of that, especially after a couple weeks from now when maybe we have two more center backs and Alex Ring is back in the midfield rotation. Yeah,
I think on the ball, Jafal is pretty exciting because he can carry the ball a little bit like Danny does. I don't think, of course, he's not as good at it, but he can do that a little bit. And I think he also has pretty good vision, can play a pretty nice pass, probably more so than Owen Wolff can. And so I think the big question for me, and I don't know one way or the other, I just like, can he cover the kind of ground and be the defensive presence that Owen Wolff can be? Because I don't think like Danny Pereira, as much as he's improved in that regard, he's still not like, that's just not his game. It's never going to be his game. Like the ground eating defensive midfielder where he's just everywhere killing everything. Like he's not that guy. And so having some guys next to him that can do that is really helpful. And even when Owen Wolff isn't playing that well, he's a very athletic player and can cover that ground, can be physical with guys. And so if Jafal can do that even close to what Owen does and is more dangerous going forward on the ball, I'd say it's worth a try, but that question mark is still going to be there.
Would you put him ahead of Johan Valencia at this point in the midfielder rotation?
I would, yes.
So I guess that's probably wherever the minutes are coming from him. They're probably coming away from Valencia, who I'd momentarily forgotten was even on the team when having this discussion. Just maybe not great for a guy that I think Austin's paying a fair amount of money to. And then you have a note about the officiating on this one, which we don't often talk about the referees on this game, but I think it's worth because was this
it's this guy's like fourth game.
Fourth
game as the center ref, and he's been a fourth official in a few other MLS games. So pretty inexperienced. I think his inexperience showed. There are some calls in the game, to be fair, that I thought were really poor in the moment. Watching the replay, I think he got right, but there's some others that he got super wrong. And then there's a moment just before halftime where there's several fouls. I think things that could be called fouls in a row that don't get called. And Driussi gets really frustrated and comes in on Gressel and just like sticks a shoulder into him and takes Gressel out right in front of the ref. And the ref has to give him a yellow card. And so, like, what did that tackle deserve a yellow card? Yes, it did. But this is part of refereeing that, like, it's this delicate balance of like keeping you hear people talk about referees keeping control of the game or losing control of the game. And there's like this barrier that gets broken when you show your first card. And so he let all these fouls get by. Players get frustrated. Tempers start flying. Driussi takes out Gressel. He has to show a yellow. He then shows 2 more yellows like in the next 5 minutes because like, okay, this seal has been broken. This is the threshold. I now have to give yellow cards. And I was worried at that point, like this game's going to be a mess now. Like he's going to end up sending 3 players off by the end of the game. It ended up calming down and he was able to claw it back, but he didn't look very confident. And I'm not saying that we lost the game because of this guy. I don't think it was that big of a margin, but it was frustrating to watch, to say the least.
Well, one other point I wanted to get into, and I don't know if you have any other player notes, but I've seen a fair amount of criticism of the depth, which is maybe also why we talked a little bit earlier about people wanting to see players up from Austin FC too. And so today is the 2-year anniversary of Austin's first match. So I just wanted to go back to that lineup and talk about where we stood then and where we stand now. So Brad Stuver at goal, obviously still in goal. The back line, Ben Sweat, Johan Romagna, Matt Beasler, Nick Lima. I feel like, well, when healthy, Austin's 3/4 better across the back line than that, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
And midfield, Ring, baby rookie Danny, and Tomas Pochettino. And then the forwards, Rodney, who we may fall in love with again now all of a sudden. Danny Houston and Cecilio Dominguez. Like, that was the very first starting 11. I think it's right now, even with the injuries, I think Austin's starting 11 is definitely far stronger than that. I don't remember exactly who was on the bench for that first match, but we saw some time from Aiden Stanley, Manny Perez, the local guy whose name I forgot, who's now playing in Canada.
Yeah,
Kukutamani. Yeah, like guys like that. Like I think that Austin FC is definitely deeper. I feel like Austin FC is deeper right now than Austin FC was in 2022. It's not like the depth. It's like the fact that the guys that were scoring up goals in bunches and are not doing that right now.
Yeah, we've got some trouble in specific spots right now, but yeah, the problem is with the starting 11. It's not with the depth necessarily. We need the guys who scored a bunch of goals and created a bunch of chances last year to just do that again. That's the problem. I think you're right.
All right, do you want to talk about anybody else before we take a break and do our game preview?
We didn't get into, well, we talk a little bit about Zardes with Mark in the interview here in a little bit, but who do you think we see start at striker this weekend against the Galaxy? Because I'll say on the watch back, just like as far as movement goes on the ball, there were several times where I was extremely frustrated with Maxi Ruti, and then Zardes, he like had a half chance in the box that maybe he could have done better with, but outside of that, I feel like he again, I feel like a crazy person saying this, but I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I would give Maxi Ruti the chance for 2 consecutive starts before I made that switch back. So like, I give him one more shot against Galaxy. Of course, that's going to contradict what we hear in the preview, as far as the potential for Austin to score some goals against the LA Galaxy back line. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I'm not going to be upset if it's Maxi. I don't mind. Like maybe Jossie coming on for like 20 minutes at the end is better. Who knows? But there's times like Maxi is good at just kind of like popping up in moments and doing something special every once in a while. But there's times when like we're driving up the side and there's space in behind, like to the near side. And instead of making that run, he just jogs up the middle of the field. And I find that so frustrating. And I'm thinking like, maybe this is like the part of the model. Like maybe Wolf is telling him not to make that run and to closer to the backside. And then Zardes comes on and he does make that run. It's like, no, like, okay, Wolf's not telling him not to. He's just not interested. And I find that really frustrating. And so I think I'm always going to have this like love-hate thing with Maxi where he does these like really special things and like fights so hard and works so hard in certain moments. And then other times just seems so disinterested in doing like very normal striker things.
Yeah, but that's the Maxi way, right? That's the way Maxi's been in this league for a dozen years now or whatever. Just I hope that we get one of those good runs of form for 3 or 4 games sometime soon.
Yeah, can't put Maxi in a box. All right, anything else about this game, Jeremiah?
No, let's go ahead and go on to next week.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Mark Rogondino to preview the LA Galaxy match. Hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Covert Auto Group. Covert Auto Group has been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community. If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertauto.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Thanks to Sage Wilson Realty, we'll be giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. So fill out the form in the show notes to enter for your chance to win.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are thrilled to be joined by Mark Rogondino. He is a play-by-play commentator for MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, and he's going to be doing the call for Austin's game in LA this weekend. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Landon, Jeremiah, stoked to spend a few minutes with you guys. Heading into week 9. I can't believe we're already 2 months into the season. That seems crazy to me, but that's probably also because I've been on the road for 8 straight weekends.
Yeah, so Austin coming into this game on I don't know if you can call it a skid after a draw, but a home draw doesn't feel great all the time. The Galaxy also coming in a little bit weak into this game, still winless. I think they have 3 points on the season. So as bad as it feels in Austin right now, I think it might feel a little worse out in Carson at the moment. What do you see as the issues with this Galaxy team right now? Why aren't things clicking for them?
I think first and foremost for them is because they're just giving up a lot of goals, right? I mean, they do have a couple of shutouts there in the season. I think Bond had one earlier in the year before he got hurt, and I'm not sure who recorded the second one. It might have been Klinsmann in there, but like the teams that they went 0-0 with most recently, I think was Portland. So, that's if you're giving up goals, that's going to make it tough. But I do think that they had some encouraging things out of the game with LAFC. I think that they had some stretches there where they were on the front foot and they actually looked pretty good, particularly in the first half. And then obviously, LAFC seemed to kind of retreat at the end, holding on. And, of course, that's never good. No matter what club you are, you're going to be under siege. And LAFC were. But I think that there was actually some encouraging things for the LA Galaxy going into this matchup. And to your point, Landon, the way you kind of laid it out, I would never say must win 8 weeks into the season, but this could be a crucial point for both of these clubs, Austin and the Galaxy, this weekend. And in particular, I was looking at Austin, right? If they can have success here, and I think they turn around then against San Jose, they've got another road game, but there's like a stretch of 4 in a row where I think they could put together a 3-0-1 and they'd feel so much better about themselves.
Yeah, Mark, I would love to think that, and I was wanting to go into seeing the results for LA, think of that, but man, after watching that match, that was such a furious finish. Like, Galaxy did not look like a club that was easily beatable. Like, there's so much talent on the field. Can you talk a little bit too about the whole thing with the front office and the supporters and sort of that chaos with what's been going on there?
It's funny because I also do some a couple days a week reporting and anchoring for Fox 11 here, and they have a pretty good grasp on the soccer scene here. So I was with my photographer today, who happens to be a big soccer fan, and he was asking me the same thing. This is a fascinating story, and it's unfortunate that this is the story that is taking the headlines as much as it is that they are one of 2 teams that haven't won a game through 8 weeks or 7 games for them in MLS. Wow. I think it was when Hercules Gomez, I was listening to some of his comments, and he's a former Galaxy guy. He loves the Galaxy. He's always been really supportive. But when I saw him kind of digging in to the situation and saying, look, you're promising a standard for this team, but yet you haven't really kept up to that standard for the last 6, 7 years, and I think that speaks volumes, right? Because this is a team that is 5 MLS Cups, original. They were the Yankees of MLS for so long, right? And now they look nothing like that. Hey, the Yankees had some bad years in the 80s though too. but I'm just saying, as a soccer fan, I love their passion. I do. I love their passion. I don't know exactly the way to go about making the statement, but they're begging for change. So they're begging for change, and they're just grasping at anything. And the ones that are there are mad anyway. I'm hoping this is like a Hollywood script, right? You guys, I'm hoping that this is the fans revolted and they said no, and then the parties came together, because even for supporting LAFC the last 5 years, the league is better when the Galaxy are a good team.
Yeah, totally agree. As you said, they didn't look all bad against LAFC the other day. I think part of their undoing was, LAFC is just extremely good and took advantage of some chances. I think something that a moment where the Galaxy can be taken advantage of is in some transition moments. I know they've got a couple of really attacking fullbacks who are good going forward, but maybe leave some space behind them. A team like LAFC takes advantage of that and will punish you every time. I don't know that Austin can necessarily take advantage of that kind of thing. They tend to like to play slower and get settled before they try to move forward at all, which is a little bit frustrating at times.
You know what I would say for your Austin FC fans that are passionate, right? I would give you one name off the top of my, and it's not the name you're probably thinking, but maybe you are, Driussi Zardes. And I say that because obviously he's familiar with playing in that park. He's a player that can rise in big games. And does that mean he's starting and he's giving you 75 minutes? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. That's not for me to answer. But could he play a role in this game? I think he could, because to your point, in transition, making diagonal runs into the corner after the ball is turned over into the middle part of the park is only going to open the middle for your other talented players that play underneath that player, right? And Driussi is certainly a guy that can hold up the ball. I'm not saying Urruti can't do that. But he likes to run toward the goal and get onto the ball. And Driussi could be hold up play, a true number 9 hold up play, and there's opening spaces for other guys. So it's something that as I was looking at Austin and starting to prepare for the weekend, I was like, because he hasn't, I know, been a regular starter, but I think he could play a role in this game.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. He's not scored.
Jeremiah's
for
looking
Austin
at us like
yet.
we're crazy.
Oh man, I have so many thoughts that we'll get into later on the Driussi Zardes experiment, but I'll save it from this part of the show.
Yeah, to end that point, I will say, like, he is a guy for not having scored yet. He's still a guy who moves well. Like, he's a very intelligent runner off the ball, and I think if there's some space to be found, I think he's maybe more likely to find it than Urruti is. Getting into the Galaxy's kind of key players, I know Chicharito missed several games with an injury. I think was last week his first start this season.
He was just back, not first start of the season, but just back into the fold.
Okay. He hasn't scored yet, but he's another talk about movement. He's a guy you can't ignore. He asks questions of a defense, makes you think about him constantly, will pull players around to either make space for himself or for someone else. And I think there was some chances in the game against LAFC the other day that either did come off or almost came off that he had a lot to do with. Ricky Puig is a guy was extremely influential last year. He's still a guy this year that as you watch him, he's clearly supremely talented, one of the most talented players in this league, but he struggled to produce those box score numbers this year. I think one could argue that it's maybe partly due to a lack of creativity around him and not having players to play those through balls to do that other stuff. Do you think that having Chicharito back in the fold and playing consistently is going to make Ricky Puig a better player?
The long-term answer is yes, but because when you say the other players around him, I think you're almost talking about Is there enough other guys around those two that can play supporting roles? And the answer is actually yes. I just think they're in a little bit of a funk. I mean, I did their last preseason game. It was a little Apple test run, and I did preseason. It was Galaxy against Toronto FC at Dignity Health Sports Park, and they looked a completely different team than the highlights of games that I've seen the last few weeks. They looked like the team that we saw in a couple of flashes in the first 20 minutes against the Galaxy. They looked like that. They looked like a team that was free flowing, that was moving the ball, that when they would put together a sequence of 10, 11, 12 passes and movement off of the ball, then all of a sudden, and they were good in transition, to your point, Landon. They would get the ball, boom, hit a 40-yard ball on a diagonal switch, and then it was on. I mean, that's how they got a couple of their best chances. But the slow start for Chicharito, the slow start for Dejan Joveljic. Remember, that was a guy who I think he scored like 9 goals. What did he have last year? He had 11 goals last year in 32 appearances. And he's the guy who was coming off the bench.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to get that from him year in and year out. Could you get like a 5 and 7 from him this year? Yeah. And if you got that last year, you would have been happy. So it's the other pieces for me, Landon, that are around him. Chicharito at this stage of where he is, he's a guy that if you feed him chances, he's going to finish them. Right. He's a guy you might not hear for 88 minutes. And then the 89th minute, it's all of a sudden, bang, 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 go. Oh, he's just tied it. We haven't heard from him all game. So, I'm looking at the other guys, right? Marky Delgado. I thought Boyd played really good. Brugman. I like Memo Rodriguez's game. Actually, I used to love him when he was with Houston. But I still think he's adjusting too. They missed that wing play of someone who's on the wing, and Boyd gives them a little bit of that wing play of someone who gets the ball wide. Chicharito can just hover around in the 18 and find little pockets of space, and somebody's beating somebody on the wing and then shooting a ball across into a space that he's checked into, and it's like cross, bang, goal.
Yeah, it almost seems like a lot of these guys are like all facilitators, and none of them are like that cutting edge. And so guys like Marky Delgado, like Memo Rodriguez, like I think they're very good players, but they seem to be like the guy, like kind of I'll say role player, and I don't mean that as a negative, really. I think it's just like they've never really been the guys to like be finishing those chances to create that final thing. And the way this team is set up, it's kind of what they need to do, and they haven't been doing it. Going into this game, I guess, like, what do you think are going to be the keys to this one? What points from either team do you think could be the difference in this game?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking Austin are going to score some goals finally. I'll be honest with you.
I would love that. You mean like one in the last honestly, 4 matches? Yeah. No, maybe even 5. Right? I mean, they're just too talented. They're too talented. It's one thing, and I will dig deeper into the notes later in this week. Is I don't know if I love Alex Ring starting that far back on the field.
It's out of necessity right now. It's
out of necessity, but like, why can't is it the Norwegian guy or the Danish guy that you guys have from Houston, Lundqvist?
He's right? He's a fullback though.
Maybe, I mean, you have who's your right back from San Jose that
Nick Lima. He played center. He played center back. He's got to
slide in.
No. We've tried all of this, Mark. We've tried all of this. Ring's the best we got right now. In 2 weeks, that might not be true anymore, but right now he's the best we got.
And can I just give a public service announcement for a moment? This is earlier in the week for those that are listening to this. So don't worry, I'll have all of your players' names down to a T come Saturday. All right.
Are there any pronunciations we can help with right now, Jeremiah? Vicinen. And as long as you don't say Driussi, then you're going to be cool.
Right. Yeah, like so much of the national media still calls him Driussi. Like get that one down and we'll all be happy.
There's an I first, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you and I, Mark, with last names like we do, we both probably go out of our ways to pronounce other people's last names correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I speak pretty decent Spanish. And my mom, God bless her soul, she made me take Latin when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And so you really learn like kind of the beginning of languages, and my family's Italian, obviously. And so my dad was pretty good speaking Italian. So yeah, I mean, That's not the hard part for me. You get a couple Eastern Bloc names, like Croatian or something every now and then that is longer, right? There's a longer name where you have to break it up into some syllables. So to rattle it off in play by play the first couple times might be a little bit long, but you get there eventually by about the 35th minute.
Yeah, just wait until our new center back Radovanovic comes in. You'll have fun.
See, but that one you got. Yeah, I've got it from now on, man. And now you said it, Radovanovic. Let's go.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Mark. Mark will be on the call this weekend you're going to be with Heath Pierce this weekend.
He stuck with me. Yeah, he drew the short straw. Heath Pierce. We've had a relationship before being partnered here with Apple TV, but it's been even better being out on the road with him. I mean, the guy is a low profile legend, right? He's 3-time MLS All-Star, played at a lot of years, a lot of good clubs. He's super smart. I'm lucky to have him.
And then you're going to be, sorry, go ahead, Jeremiah.
So I was going to follow up on that because you've obviously done a lot of soccer. Like, how has the Apple TV experience been overall? So what you expected? Better, worse, different?
No. I would say, it's been fantastic, but it's still growing, right? I mean, we're only 8 weeks in, and think about this. In that 8 weeks, say you have 14 matches every match day, so 14 times 8, whatever that number comes up to, 112. I think that would be like in 8 weeks, getting it off the ground, teams everywhere, all over the country. I mean, that's not easy for anybody to do. So I think it's been great so far. I might love a little more camera time, but we'll get there. That's why I'm here with you guys.
You're also going to be coming to Q2 next weekend when Austin plays San Jose, right?
It'll be my first trip ever there, and I am super pumped. I was thinking about maybe even flying in early, see if I can set up a tea time on Friday, and just but I am super pumped to see it. Obviously, with the ability to cover LAFC for the last 5 years in their stadium. I mean, there's only a few stadiums that bring that fire like that around MLS. Now, a lot of stadiums bring it, period, right? There's only a few, I think, that are in that upper echelon of just the experience is like none other. And I think Q2 is going to be like that. So, if McConaughey wants to give me a call and he wants to pop through on the broadcast or something like that, I don't think anybody else has done that yet. So you guys probably have a direct line to him. So you might be able to make it happen.
Yeah, the bat phone for the Mac phone, we'll call it.
Right.
All right. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining us. Maybe we'll end up talking to you again next week to preview that San Jose game. But thanks for joining us. And igual la próxima vez lo haremos en español.
Entonces, 2-3 preguntas, no problema, pero en inglés está bien también. You got that, Jeremiah?
Gracias.
Yes. Jeremiah's been doing Duolingo for like a year now.
Yeah, 450 days in a Duolingo. I can tell you how to eat apples and go to the shoe store. It's been great.
Jeremiah, ¿cómo estás hoy?
Muy bien, y tú.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, we're going to stop this now.
Gracias, compañeros. A la próxima vez.
Thanks, Mark. All right, thanks again to Mark for taking some time to talk to us. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you want to continue the conversation, come find us online at elviajero87 and jbentley_ATX on Twitter, and then at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then we'll also encourage you to sign up for the Patreon. Jeremiah, I have tracking info for the scarves. They are currently in France.
Last time we talked, they were in Turkey. So they're making progress. I like it.
Getting closer. So we think we're going to have them in hand in the next week or so. So we can post some real pictures of those. And then I think once we get those, we can actually start shipping some stuff out pretty soon after. So we'll keep y'all posted on that. And we'd also like to encourage you to visit the Striker website where you can get a 30% discount with the code MoonTower23 with a capital M. Jeremiah, what can folks look out for there?
Well, there's always better Austin FC game covers than anywhere else, but we did, in addition to that, get a MLS notebook from Phil West today. So if you want a pretty good brief overview of how things went on the match week as a whole, I would encourage everybody to check that out.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review the LA Galaxy game and then preview the San Jose game. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing. See you never.
La gente,
Oh my God.